Well, on European Parliament, that's certainly an important institution, but does not mean that whatever it does is useful. There are some negative initiatives, which means that European Parliament requires monitoring. I give you two examples. First, you might remember the Service Directive, which was a very important measure to increase the single market. And in its original form, as proposed by Commissioner Bolkestein, it was pretty radical. But then it was watered down in the European Parliament under the impact of political forces coming from more developed economies of the European Union. The second, European Parliament is just passing the financial regulation, which contains completely unnecessary measures. It is not addressing the main reasons for the financial crisis as identified by the Larosière report I was a member of, but it's focusing on populist measures. For example, hedge funds and private equity funds were not at the center. They were not the reasons for the crisis. The main reason, as I stressed, were bad economic policies, especially in the US. But what the European Parliament is passing tough restrictions on the hedge fund and private equity fund. It is clearly political. It's clearly populist.
Jacek Spendel, Globalization Institute. I have a question to Prime Minister Lahr. First of all, I would like to say thank you that you gave us an example of Estonia, a successful story of country which limited the government, which cut spendings and increased the individual freedom. But I would like to ask you, how can you keep these changes in Estonia? How you can keep this classical liberal approach? Because as we saw on Professor Balcerovic's presentation, when the societies are getting richer and richer, the people's needs are increasing and they want sometimes more from the government. And in my opinion, it's a great threat. So please explain your ideas in this respect. Thank you.
I wonder if I could just elaborate that question a little bit more, put a point on it. It seems to me that what happens in welfare societies is that, as you've already pointed out, there's this increase of constituents by politicians. Politicians are in effect buying votes. When you get to the point in a society where there are more people who are dependent upon the government, there is more political incentive to elect people who will then support the welfare state. How do we back out of that? Because that becomes a very dangerous moment where, as Hayek said, the state is the myth where everybody thinks they can live at everyone else's expense.
No, first of all, it's a moral question of political courage of each individual politician. What you want from the world. Are you there to gain more power? And when you gain power, so why? What to do with this? Or are you there to serve? It's a basic moral question, starting from this. And when you serve, then you're not afraid to decide. To be very frank, I never cared what the people think on my decisions. And when they elect me back or not, unfortunately, they always time electing me back to all possible offices. But it's actually very simple. And I really, it's very hard sometimes to understand my colleagues who couldn't, first of all, say what is truth, are always trying to behave politically correctly only, or the other is looking at colleagues in the different offices who are just afraid to pass any reasonable decision. That's the first part. It's a moral courage. The second part, of course, is that in reality there are not too many of them with such of courage, and which means you must create the protective systems. This is coming the laws, there are coming the constitutions. You must, by example, to put in the constitution that you couldn't run the budget deficit is not a bad idea at all. We are having this in the laws. And when it comes, you must start to cut it, and everybody knows it. And that's, you can bolster yourself and protect the market-oriented basic reforms, sometimes through legislation. But again, as you know, the legislation sometimes is one thing and the reality is the third thing. So then you need we can see a lot of intellectual courage from the society. You need such an institution as Professor Patserovic mentioned, as Acton Institute and all other market forms to really to hamper this question. This is dangerous, this is stupid, this is against your own freedom. When your freedom is taken away, everybody in the country will be troubled. This is not the question, is this economical, personal, political, whatever freedom. When it takes away, the freedom in all other areas goes down also. And this must be talked and talked and talked and talked. That's why we need a lot of people who are done in different organizations, the same work in abroad, in Poland, in different countries. And of course, then you must trust the God. The God does the work. In my country, it did. When we were actually exactly in this situation, where Estonia has run very good reforms, and then we failed the victims of their own reforms because suddenly we became richer as ever. And of course, immediately when you start to become rich, the people like more money, then they started to demand more privileges. And there was always, as in Estonia, there were happy politicians who were really to give them. And then happily the economical crisis hit. So thanks to the United States stupid government who created this crisis, because it stopped us. Because suddenly it was seen there is no money. And this understanding that actually there is really no money helps very much. And with this understanding, it was possible for us to cut in the last minute. Looking on my own country, when we have followed the same path of such of higher and higher social spending and higher governmental costs, we have been in 5 years in the situation of Greece. It happens faster. I think this crisis teaches us that it's very hard actually to be normal and to work hard and go positively and do decisions, but it's very easy to go to the wrong way. The way of the hell is really it depends on very small steps, and you very often doesn't notice when you are taking them. And this crisis is an excellent example of all this. And namely, thanks to this crisis, we stopped. I think for me, Estonia will be the only country who will join the Eurozone when the Eurozone still exists there in 2011 in the 1st of January. But it's not important for us to have euro. The euro was this excellent carrot for us to make all these cuts which were absolutely necessary. To be very frank, of course, I have wanted to do more of them. But again, I must sometimes, the politician, to think with the political reality and how far the partners are ready to go. But we got enough, at least, to get us to the healthy ground. But it's still a long way to go. And I really hope that this lesson of this crisis will be remembered. Of course, it's maybe wrong hope that people don't remember such of things too long, but nevertheless, it teaches somebody, because it's really very bad. And I'm sure that after this, when we somebody goes with the next social programs, we will at least ask what it will pay, what is the cost of this program, not now, but in 5 or 10 years, and can we really afford it? Or we can go to the more reasonable way and trust more the freedom of and free will and liberty of the people, which is the most reasonable thing to do. So in this, again, when the money ends, the people start to think, and that's always a good thing.